Hello, everyone. Welcome to EduTalk 876. This is our live second session. I am Trevor Cole. With me are two wonderful co-creators of this podcast, Doctors Shawnee Hardware and Annette Walker. Our goal is to discuss topical issues that are impacting educational stakeholders, including teachers, principals, students, among others. Today, we will be discussing teachers' mental health. This connects with our second session aired on June 6 about teaching during the pandemic in Jamaica. This evening, we have in our midst four hardworking educators who have agreed to share their lived and professional experiences about teachers' mental health. Dr. Orlean Brown-Earle, Davis Ellis, Sheldon Royes, and Cyreta Henry. Dr. Orlean Brown-Earle is a child psychologist and family therapist. She's also an associate professor at the Northern Caribbean University, lecturing in the undergraduate and graduate psychology and counseling programs. Ms. Davis Ellis is a health and family life educator who uses different art forms to promote health, wellness topics. She is a group facilitator and a wellness advocate at the Therapia Circle. Sheldon Royes is a trained guidance counselor employed to the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information and the Highgate Primary and Junior High School for over 9 years. Cyreta Henry is an educator. She is also an astute leader with over 15 years of experience teaching at various levels across the education system. She presently serves as a mathematics coach with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, a director for Friends for Change Foundation, and treasurer for the Mentorship Association of Jamaica. Her emphasis is on youth development, teacher education, and volunteerism. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. At this time, I will hand over to my co-host, Dr. Shawnee Hardware.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cole, for that very illustrious introduction. So to our panelists, our previous panelists mentioned some of the hardship that they face teaching during the pandemic. They were all teachers. So we wanted to talk a little bit more, stemming from the major theme of our June 6th podcast was the effect on teaching in the pandemic, and in some cases limited support from the ministry and how those impact teachers' mental health. For these teachers, teaching during the pandemic has shifted their hours to work, hours of work to accommodate meetings and activities beyond their scheduled working hours. So briefly, what are your experiences working virtually, or perhaps you're working in a hybrid model for the past year and a half? So I see everyone is ready to go. So let me ask Ms. Ellis to start us off.
All right, so far since the pandemic, I have had to be using more songs. I have to be writing more songs to keep me going, because sometimes, as a teacher, I'm a human being. I have feelings. When you show up for class and you can almost guess that certain students might not come, or more than 90% of the class might not come, sometimes it can get discouraging. So how I keep myself is to always use music. Sometimes a child might ask if I'm running a radio station. Miss, it sound like you're on the radio. But I have to do that to keep myself going, and that also works for some students. I've had to use writing because sometimes the mind is just racing, the thoughts are racing, and I might not be as focused as I want to be. So I use poems. So for example, one evening I penned a poem. Why didn't I realize that the students were anxious? Was I the one needing to be more conscious? Did I encourage the students and make them feel content? Or did I execute some activities to bear each moment? I didn't eat lunch today because I put the children first. Now my stomach bloats as if it would burst. Did I make enough corrections to the PowerPoint presentation? And isn't there a student who need commendation? My computer is dead. I didn't get a chance to charge my device. I will recharge right now, lest I pay the price. So I had to use poetry sometimes to help myself. And of course, I would share my creations with other teachers.
Wow, you're very creative. So perhaps you can share some of that creative genes with me because I do
Or no
multiple
problem,
and
collaboration.
student engagement work. Okay, let's hear from another one of our panelists. Anyone could unmute and go.
So I've had the opportunity this past couple of years to be teaching graduate students only. So that's master's and doctoral students. And even though we have been online for most of our classes, the students still, as adults, average age 30, still want face-to-face. And so that has been something that, you have to be said, no, no, no. I mean, we even had a group of students who had a social distance get together at the end because the need to reach out and touch, to actually know who the lecturers were, to see them face to face, to see the humanity in them. So I find that that's a real serious factor. Also, just when I went and had that little luncheon with them, just the things that they share that they would normally share online in a face-to-face setting was so powerful and so important. So it really has impacted my students, even though they wouldn't be at class regularly, face-to-face, but would have had probably a couple of sessions that they would have come in. And they truly were looking forward to that. And I found that I myself was looking forward to that too.
Yes, yes. I know from my own experience teaching virtually that especially younger kids, they need that level of social interaction, and some even or most perhaps thrive better in that face-to-face social interaction. Okay, it's not my time to answer questions. So let's go over to Mr. Royes.
Very good evening to all the persons that are on this evening. For me, the experience has been really quite mind-boggling, and mind-boggling for the wrong reasons. I have seen something that I've never seen in my life. When you go online, there are some experiences that you get. It makes you wonder why we have the challenges we have with the children in the physical form of the classroom. I will say, however, that online has brought out a lot in me because I was not very technological savvy before. And since I've been going online, I'm sure that my fellow panelists can attest to this. I have gotten very witty in terms of, I think I'm almost at the level to call myself a technocrat. And as teachers, we are constantly learning. And this was very pronounced. The idea of continuous learning, even outside of not going to a school or a training facility. Also for me, I realized that I got a reality check in terms of how some of the things that are happening in the homes of the children. And I now know how to treat each child accordingly. So for me, that's where my experience virtually is right now.
So what I'm hearing is that it gave you a little window into the children's own their home learning environment as
Absolutely,
well.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting point. Okay, Miss Henry, not the last but not the least. Well, I saw you nodding when Mr. Royes mentioned some points. So I guess there are some similarities there in terms of your own experience.
There has been a lot of similarities based on what the others would have said. For me, my experience working virtually for the past year and a half has had both negative and positive effects. Negatively, let me start with that first. I think it kind of limits my reach and what I can do and what I would like to do. In terms of my role as a mathematics coach, I work mainly with the teachers, right? And from time to time, the students as well. However, this virtual space though, it has really allowed me greater insight into my teachers as persons, not just teachers. I've really gotten to know them personally because there are just some things that we would not have discussed within the classroom space. But now, when they are feeling overwhelmed, they call their math coach. They need some advice, they call their math coach. I've also gotten the opportunity to really bond with some of my parents as well. And yes, I know that it has been hard, the workload and all of that. But I think, they say out of everything bad comes something good. I think this virtual period has given us the opportunity to shake up our space, It has afforded us the opportunity to broaden our horizons. As Mr. Royes said, I was not really a technologically inclined person. And now I find myself doing things I never thought I would. I find myself more eager to learn new stuff, Yes. So as I said initially, the experiences have been good and bad, but honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I am grateful for everything that I have learned and done so far.
Yes, so thank you for that answer. And I want to explore a little bit more because I know a lot of the literature speaks to the lack of social engagement or loss in relationships due to more virtual learning and video conferences. So could you explore a little bit more on how this environment has allowed you, in your words, to bond more with teachers and provide more support for them?
All right. Within the regular classroom setting, right? You'll find that most times when I interact with the teachers, it would just be within school time. Maybe I might go for an observation or a consultation and we have a discussion, and that discussion is primarily professional, so we just discuss what is being done pertaining to the classroom space and that's it. But now I find that they tend to reach out to me more, they are sharing their fears, their anxieties, and the excitement, so that promotes the space for more bonding with them. So things that they would have never really said. So, you go to school 8:30 to 3, after 3 o'clock, it's like it's finished until you go back the next day again. But now I find myself talking to them all hours of the night, all hours of the morning, and it really creates the space for bonding and creating relationships.
Okay, thank you. And it seems as if you're someone who's able to manage that continuous engagement of work. I know a lot of people say that they need that shut off. So thank you for sharing that. My next question would have been, how have your professional experiences changed during the pandemic? However, you've covered that. So I'll pass it on to Dr. Walker to ask the next few set of questions.
It's okay to say Miss as well. Good evening again, everyone. So I'm going to turn my direction now specifically to Dr. Brown-Earle, and then I'm going to bring in other members of the panelists. So Dr. Brown-Earle, in addressing you directly, in your June 2021 Jamaican Observer article, you specifically mentioned the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder in some Jamaicans' mental well-being. We know that this topic is mentioned in many Jamaican academic spheres. It's not, I should say, mentioned in many Jamaican academic spheres. For many teachers, however, context essentially shapes the challenges that they encounter daily. And for some, the community in which they serve is quite volatile. And in some instances, teachers are victims to some of these issues. So my question to you today is, why do you think it's important for Jamaicans at large, and or teachers specifically, the need to understand what exactly is post-traumatic stress, what are the symptoms, and the long-term impact on mental health if not treated?
Thank you so much for that. I'm so happy and excited for this year because even the Olympics, as you all know, has made us seriously talking about mental health. And so that's a wonderful question. So post-traumatic stress disorder usually presents itself after you have had some negative experience, you've been traumatized. It can be a car accident, it can be a shock, it can be something that you just never dealt with, and then 2 days down the road, 2 weeks down the road, 2 years down the road, 20 years down the road, something triggers the memory and it causes you to behave as abnormally. Let me simplify it like that. And so what we have recognized, and it's even worse when you have little or no support system.
Wow.
So you can just imagine now, we have teachers who might have their own social and emotional issues. They have the situation thrust upon them to work with children. And you can just imagine, for example, a teacher who is teaching children who are at the lower academic end of the realm. And then she's coping with all of this. So then burnout is going to come even faster than it normally would in a regular academic setting. Then she has that to deal with, and then she has to deal with possibly a few of the students who are experiencing traumatic episodes. Now, whereas in a regular academic setting, she can just call the guidance counselor in and they come in and that. Some of the schools don't have guidance counselors. So that additional stuff is thrust upon them. And even where they're guidance counselors, some guidance counselors now have had to be doing additional work. I know of schools where they're given other academic things to do. So think of this teacher's well-being, their emotional well-being, their spiritual well-being, their social well-being. Then, of course, we have teachers who have children.
Yep.
So they're coping with their 2 to 4 children in the home on the various devices doing that. Many are single parents.
Yes.
They don't have that support system. And then you and I know that the light bill has gone up, the food bill has gone up, the internet data bill has gone up, and all of that is impacting and causing them to not act and or react positively to things as they normally would in a regular setting, pre-COVID. And a big concern there is now, what is the support system there for them?
Yes.
How many teachers can afford to pay a psychologist privately? How many public health services are available and accessible to them? We do have some schools, thank God, who have the wonderful opportunity of having teacher clients referred to me. But the schools that are covering the cost are the schools that have a special account where the teacher's not well, there's a situation, they can pay for the services. How many teachers are able to get that kind of support system? And so these are the things that we really need to find out what's happening, what social and emotional support systems are there for these teachers, because they're going through a lot. You heard forget the young lady said a while ago, it's a 24-hour job now.
Yeah.
I have 2 children in high school. One just finished going on to college. And I've heard the teachers and the parents are so not nice. Let me use that term. Calling them 9 o'clock in the night. Them to just be available. And then in the early days, teachers do tell me that they would answer the phone because they were like, I wonder if something happened to the child while the parent is calling me. And the parent is saying, I just come off of my shift, and I need to know what the homework is. Yes, I mean, some experiences that these teachers have had. And then there are teachers where their parents know where the homes are coming to visit, which would not normally happen. So, the teachers have had a lot of stresses placed on them. And I'm really hoping that there is provision for emotional and social support care as of September 1. Let me put it that way. So that's what's happening, and that's where I think we need to go.
Yeah, thank you so much. But I want to still delve a little bit deeper, because I know that this is a very important topic. And for some of us, sometimes we go through these experiences and we don't even recognize the symptoms. We just might say, oh my God, my heart is palpitating, or I feel like I'm having, like running belly, or I'm sweating and all these kinds of things. So could you just briefly, for our audience and even for some of our teachers watching, and for those who will be listening on later on, talk a little bit about some of the symptoms that persons may perhaps need to zero in on, especially our educators.
Okay, thank you. So we want a teacher, if you're recognizing that you're not focusing as you normally should, if the little things that you could gloss over before, are becoming stressors, major stressors in your life, you need to say something is not okay here. Things that you would laugh about, not take seriously. And you realize that you're focusing on them and they're causing additional emotional stresses on you. You need to recognize that something is not okay. So mentally and then physically, are you losing weight? Are you gaining weight? Are you eating more than you normally would? Those kind of things you need to look out for and find out what's happening. It's not normal. These behaviors are not normal. The things that you would normally do. Do you find that you're shouting at the children more, while you're teaching online, or when you do have those face-to-face sessions? Are you angry and irritated more than usual? That is it. So those are once we see those behaviors and that was not normally you need to go and seek some help.
Right. And so in seeking some help, I'm still here with you. I'm still here with you, Dr. Brown, because yes. I really, this is a really, really important area, and especially since we're going to be opening school in September. And we have been hearing even from our panelists before how they have been impacted. Some will say, like it's borderline madness when you go through certain stresses. Not her exact words, but she was directing her, comments in that direction. So can you just briefly, maybe just 3 points or however, some of the long-term impact that this post-traumatic stress or some of these symptoms, if not treated, can have on their mental health?
Well, let me tell you, it can present with so many disorders. The teacher, depending on the preconditions, because they might have a physical health with the stressors that they're experiencing. They might even have had some mental health issues before, like mild depression, and they can go straight into severe depression. They can present with any of the anxiety disorders once there's no treatment or support system in place for them to cope successfully and be better as they go through these negative experiences. So it's a wide list out there. And primarily what's going to be a key concern is if they don't get help immediately, or they themselves don't recognize that this is what's happening to them. So we want their friends. And Doc, I'm so happy that you're saying this. This is so powerful. We want their friends out there to say, you know what? Orlean wasn't like this before. I need to reach out to Orlean and say, you never used to be so negative, or you never used to be so not nice before.
Right.
You really, something is not okay with you. Come and talk with me. And if you don't want to talk with me, I think we really need to go and get you somebody else to talk to, whether it's a counselor or psychologist. Because all thing to remember too, Doc, is that they have relationship issues that they're also coping with. And guess what happened? They're not going to school where they can leave the problem with the husband or the spouse. They're at home with the person.
Yeah.
So the person or is emotionally abusive or physically abusive, they're in the house with the person. So whereas school was a respite, a little 5 to 8 hour getaway from the situation, they don't have it anymore. So we want, all of those mental health disorders can present itself. And let me tell you something, the person who was nice and soft and sweet can become aggressive. So we want to, as friends and colleagues, we need to reach out when we see the individuals not being their normal selves and help them to get some support help immediately.
All right, so we're going to draw on you in a few minutes, but let's get the perspective from also our guidance counselors. Mr. Royes, in instances where you have students, I'm certain, I don't know in terms of the school context in which you operate, because we know that the community context also dictates some of the issues that you have. They can be transferred within the school. So I know that in some instances we have students who witness, different traumatic incidents, and so, how do you as a guidance counselor then essentially support teachers who must respond to students with these issues and even students themselves?
Well, let's just put some things into perspective. I think it must be understood that, and I think a lot of parents don't understand that teachers are human beings and there's blood that runs through us. Sometimes they say a lot of negatives about the teacher, but the truth is, just as how parents are affected and other persons are affected by traumatic situations, the same exists with children. So I want to put it out there that teachers, self-care is essential.
Yes.
Do not hesitate to take care of yourself and treat yourselves to luxuries if that's what you need to do.
Mm.
Your body is a temple of God and it needs to be constantly given the best things. And if your body is a temple of God and God lives in your body, it's only right that you put good things in there and you treat yourself to good things.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times as educators, we leave from work and we go home and we go home to work again. So we are constantly working, as my fellow panelists alluded to earlier.
Yes.
There has to come a time where our mental clock turns off and say, you know what? I am home now. It's family time. It's my time. I need to do me and I need to be there for my family. And if we're not doing this, then we are going to find ourselves always being stressed. Work is important, but you cannot work unless you are healthy.
Yeah, this is true. And even though I'm not in the classroom, I do find myself working a lot more, even on the weekend, because then you're compensating some people, and I can speak for myself, we're compensating for that time that we would take to travel and prep for work. So we take on additional chores, right? So that's a very important point.
Cyreta or Miss Ellis, you have any comments there as it pertains to, you know, dealing with students who perhaps have witnessed different traumatic, you know, events, or they have traumatic experiences, and how, even for you, how does that affect you when having to monitor them or seeing that their behavioral pattern is changing, as Dr. Brown-Earle alluded to earlier, and as even your own individual self, you have your own personal challenges, and then your own workload and work demands compounded with that, you have to deal with these other issues.
As it relates to the students, it's kind of heartrending and difficult because, you know, within the physical space, you know, when you would have noticed some change in a particular child's behavior, you would have had the opportunity, you know, of kind of taking them one side then to speak to them. But no, you cannot address anything directly because you don't know who might be in their immediate space. So some of the things you just have to let it slide because there's nothing that you can really do without inadvertently offending someone. As it relates to the teachers, I was listening to Dr. Brown-Earle, you know, and I'm saying that, you know, as teachers, educators, we ought to be our brother's keepers. And sometimes we are so caught up in our own lives, our own selves, that we don't even realize that our colleague over there is acting differently or needs some help. You know, so I think we just need to let go and try to be that beacon of light and strength for each other, so that, you know, things don't really get too bad before we actually realize that there is a change and something needs to be done about it.
Any comments on your end? I'm not hearing you, you're muted.
Muted. I know you're saying wonderful things, Miss Ellis, but you're muted.
Yes, I was saying wonderful point, Miss Henry. It's quite fitting for me to say that I have been a bit disappointed during my classes because usually in a physical setting, the students are more comfortable to share certain sensitive information. So for example, in physical class, I might have been in a situation where because we're singing a song, "Dirty man, leave the people picnic them alone." That one song alone, just by observing a child, you realize that the child is responding differently to it until the child actually confesses that they were actually being harassed, sexually harassed by family members. Now, virtually, students hardly want to say anything. I know that for last year, there might have been a few students who said that they were feeling depressed One student even said that they felt suicidal. And I said, you know what? I might have felt that way this week. I said it to the child. I know that other teachers and adults might have been in the group, but I feel as if sometimes concerning mental health, we need to be a little bit more genuine, a little bit more authentic, playing the role as a peer support and not always as an expert dishing out advice. I mean, before I came on here today, I tried to get some feedback from parents, from teachers. And one such person was saying, you know, don't ask about my problems if you're going to come with hypothetical theory-based situations. So as much as possible, we have to be a little bit more practical. Sometimes it is hard to have these conversations because managers and supervisors, those who are in charge, might not want to show weakness. They might want to seem strong. But if only we could just use small opportunities to talk, then we will realize that, boy, I might have felt, I might have had a suicidal thought this week, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to kill myself. This was being put in place. That was being put in place, and we survive, we're resilient. So we need to be able to testify more and learn from our stories, learn from our experiences. Very important for me.
Thank you so much for that point. It segues into...
Let me just quickly interject, if that's all right.
Oh, okay, you may go ahead.
Over time, what I've realized is that we don't value the value of, we don't understand how serious mental health is. And it's something that we take for granted. So it is not something that is put at the forefront. We do not address it because it, nothing to do the pitney, nothing to do the boy, nothing to do the colleague. I mean, so in us not appreciating how serious this is, it is something that transcends over time and just continues to stay with us. And because it continues to stay with us, there is no closure to us, and we are constantly reminded when there are similar situations that exist, and it's like it's just getting compounded over time, always compounded. And then guess what? We break and we fall apart. And all because the issue was not addressed from the onset.
Thank you so much for your comments. So in continuing the conversation, I just want to quickly say, you know, when we even look at some of our leading Jamaican scholars or scholars in the Caribbean, such as the late Professor Hicklin and others who, you know, they suggested, and quite frankly, we know for a fact that Jamaicans in general are, you know, not all, but most of us, we're quite reluctant to admit that we're experiencing mental health. You know, Ms. Ellis talked about that being authentic, right? And so we also know from research that the institutionalization of the mentally ill and subsequent structural, you know, the societal and the social stigma around mental health, it has really over time contributed to this lack of access to mental health care. And so given this history from the colonial era, even now, and in keeping with even with your own professional experience, I'm going to ask Dr. Brown-Earle to really respond to this question, and then we get the perspective of our guidance consultant and our other two panelists. You know, what do you think essentially are some of the barriers to accessing mental health care among many Jamaicans?
And so one of the barriers is insufficient public education, which is why your program today is so important and is going to be so powerful. Because one of the wonderful things about the modality you're using is that it can be accessed forever, quote unquote, hereafter. So information is key. What is it? Also, we need to have more persons. We need to have more persons talk about the success stories. Yeah. That they have gotten support systems, interventions have been put in place, and they have been helped. Then, of course, we don't have enough professionals out there who can give care. And I'm talking about the public level, because there's a lot of people doing private work. But at the public level, because the average person can't afford it. Let's be real here. Yes. You know, so we need not just child guidance clinics. We need adult guidance clinics. We're even 2 days a week in 4 major clinics that persons are there available. I'm talking about the psychiatrists. I'm talking about general counselors and psychologists who can provide the early intervention. And at
Yes.
least there are weekly or bi-weekly visits for the
Mm.
persons to help to cope to the strategies and those are things. And of course, we have the myths dealing with. Lord have mercy, pray for us.
Yes,
There are
yes,
so many myths surrounding mental health issues that we really need to educate our public,
absolutely.
And another thing that I have concerns about is that, for example, you will have a mother who would have, quote unquote, survived some traumatic situation. And when her child or his child also has a negative experience, I've heard parents say publicly, I survived it, my child can too. And I'm
Yes,
like, okay, how well are you surviving it? If you
Mhm.
have that aggressive tone when you're
Mhm.
talking about how you survive it. So
Mhm.
those are the things. So we need to educate people more information out there, dispel the myths, and have more access to mental health care. Those things are going to be so important right now, immediately, to help our nation.
Mhm. And oh my goodness, you have brought up so many, a little piece. There's a nugget there that you talk about, um, different myths, right? And here lies now that intersectionality with the spirituality piece. You know,
Yes.
we know predominantly Jamaica is a Christian nation, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
tend to view people who are mentally ill as mad, or in other words, we say that they're crazy. And sometimes we even, I'm going to use it, sometimes we say, oh my God, somebody must do, it must be dopey, or it must be obeah.
Yes.
We tend
Right.
to gravitate to that, not thinking and recognizing that mental health issues, it manifests itself in varying ways. So can you just remind us, I know that we're going to go to the recommendations piece, but can you just place a little bit
Right.
more emphasis again on why it's important that we don't just gravitate to that obeah element as we normally do, some of us, I should say, in the Jamaican context?
Dr. Walker, more of us do than you realize. You'll be surprised as the persons who will walk up to you socially, casually, and say, "Are somebody doing something?"
Wow.
The persons at the highest level in the Christian churches and the persons who don't go to church. Okay? So it's something that is permeated our society to such an extent that the psychologists and counselors island well will tell you it's a great barrier to treatment. Because you know what it does to I'm Christian, so I'm going to tell you that the devil, the enemy, uses this to make people absolve themselves of the responsibility of care. So if it's a dopey do it, it's not me. So therefore, we have to go find something to fix the dopey. And even when they spend, let me tell you, man, psychologists will tell you, we have had persons come in for care. And they're frank, after they received care from us, the professionals, and things have worked out well, you'll hear them say, that's a good thing to come to you now because they want the money on my waist at Obia, man.
Oh,
That's a real thing. And I mean, it's not, remember, the spirit world, the negative spirit world is not the, so my colleagues in Europe, they have the same issues. My colleagues in Africa, they have the same issues. So the myths are one of the things that we really need to work on, but we can all work on educating. So for example, what I do, I sit down with my parents who might come in with a child who has Down syndrome, for example, and I sit down and give them a biology lesson as to why it has happened.
Mhm.
When my children or my adults who present with depression, I sit down and I have a discussion about the chemicals in the brain because I have to educate this person, because if this person thinks somebody else do it, they're not going to take responsibility to be a part of the care and treatment, Dr. Hardware, of the client. You understand? And the other thing that's happening to us too is that, let me tell you, man, we have had experiences, the psychologists can tell you, parents send the money with the child in an envelope and don't turn up at all because the therapist must cure the child.
Wow.
And so what we have had to be doing, my colleagues, when we have our meetings, we send back the child with the money and say, parent, if you don't come, this child cannot be treated. So these are the kind of experiences, real experiences they're having out there, dealing with the myths and the witchcraft mentality that has permeated our society to such an extent that persons are absolving themselves of responsibility and blaming whoever else for the problems that they're having. So you know, there's a lot of work to be done out there. But as I said again, your forum here tonight is powerful and important because it's going to educate, and that is key.
Other panelists, we're not ignoring you. We know this is such a sensitive topic and so crucial. I'm going to turn it over to my my co-host to continue the discussion around that, to engage with you around this similar question. Shawnee.
Okay, so thank you very much. In the interest of time, the next question is focused to the teachers and the guidance counselors. So given your role and some of your key tasks in terms of supporting students and parents, having large and small group discussion, community discussion, not only about students' scholastic achievement, but socio-emotional issues, bullying, disciplinary issues, etc. Have you noticed an increase in parents and teachers' concern about students' well-being and by extension, their learning engagement? So in light of the conversation around teaching online and the changing roles that teachers and guidance counselors are playing now, have you noticed that there's an increase in the parents and teachers' concern about students' well-being and their learning engagement? And any one of our esteemed educators or guidance counselor can answer.
Right. For me, I would say yes, there has been some changes as it relates to, you know, there's a bond that teachers and students have. Believe you me, there are some things that students will talk to their teachers about that the parents know nothing about. Mm-hmm. And these teachers, knowing these students, they are aware of some of the things that affect them. And the virtual space causes a chasm between the teachers and the students. So the teachers are not able to reach the students the way how they would have wanted to. And it just becomes an emotional burden on the teachers, because I have spoken to some of my teachers and they would say, I don't see so and so come on from where they, and I know that he or she used to this, and I'm trying to call the mother and I can't get the mother, and you know, and that is a whole lot for the teacher, because there is no way now in this time and space now for the teacher to really get a chance to reach out. You know, you might have been able to call in the parents to come into school, and yes, they might or might not show, or if the school has a guidance counselor, you know, some guidance counselors, they visit, do home visits and so forth. But no, it's really hard. The teacher doesn't have any connection with the students. And this is just one more thing to stress the teacher on top of everything that is stressing the teachers.
That's an awesome response. And I was going to ask you if that's the role of the guidance counselor, but perhaps Mr. Trevor Cole, principal at large, can advise us as to what happens in that process if the teachers are unable to connect. And then I'll leave it to Miss Ellis and Mr. Royes to answer after that.
Thank you, Doc. You know, our teachers do a lot, and they wear many hats, and the challenges are real. I think that's where we need to start, that the challenges that we encounter on a daily basis are real. There are many, and it's difficult. It's difficult. It's challenging, because the teachers, yes, do want to connect with their students, but there are barriers in making that connection. And some of what our esteemed panelists would have shared earlier is so true. The matter of connecting individually and getting to know the children, and you know what their likes are, what their dislikes are, you know, what ticks them and move them and challenge them and so forth. Those things sometimes are not necessarily done during the virtual space. And so there is some connection, but there's also a disconnect as well. Okay. And because the teachers would have worked for an extended period of time, longer hours, after a lesson or so, they too are tired and they need to attend to their families and so forth. And so the time to maybe reconnect with a child who was displaying some challenges during the day would have been missed. But also in my capacity as a school administrator, I know personally the challenges in terms of managing, emotions, and I have to also manage my emotions. And I always place, the children's issues at the forefront because schools are for children, right? And we have to make sure that we are providing the kinds of services to meet their needs. So if I could just engage Dr. Earle just for a little, because I want to raise something, it may be quite sensitive, but it is something that is important for us to discuss as well.
1 second, Mr. Cole. We want to give
Sure.
our panelists the opportunity, Mr. Ellis and Mr.
All right, yes, go ahead, and then I will ask Dr. Earle.
So, the question was, have you noticed an increase in the parents and students' concern, parents and teachers' concern about students' well-being and by extension, learning engagement, since you're doing virtual schooling and in light of all the issues that were mentioned before? Miss Ellis, and then you, Mr. Royes.
All right, thank you so much. We have noticed some changes. I have had teachers who expressed to me that they're clinically depressed. They're clinically depressed. I've had a teacher who called me and said, "Boy, Miss Ellis, I was just shouting at the students. I didn't know how to control myself and I had to end the class." Overall, I do believe that we still might not have a lot of parents who know how to check up on the students because, for example, some parents still are waiting to come to the school before they actually know how the student was doing throughout the semester or throughout the year. So I do not see much changes. What I do know is that all stakeholders must be able to work together and the parents must be provided sufficient forums to speak, because sometimes parents have something to say, but they might not feel as if such an environment was provided. So I have enjoyed creating less stress sessions for teachers and parents. I particularly enjoyed some online sessions that with the Early Childhood Commission. And it was very engaging. Parents were able to speak. It was very refreshing. But outside of that, I believe that the pandemic has merely highlighted some of the issues that we were already battling with face to face.
Yes.
And I don't believe they're necessarily new, but they certainly show us that we have a lot of work to do. All of us, we are not perfect, because there are teachers who teach just because they had battled with a learning deficit or a mental illness. They might have been overcoming it. Some don't even know, some don't have a diagnosis. But it's because of these things why they're even in the profession and why they can still be able to relate to the students. So there's lots for us to bear in mind. In terms of learning poverty as well, which is defined as a percentage of about 10-year-olds unable to read and understand a simple text. I saw some information from the World Bank, and I mean, it's a bit mind-boggling because we're losing a lot of money as well. And somewhere down the line, we're gonna have students who are not able to interpret a paragraph, what it is saying, because they have just been so out of the system. Some students have been seen on the road, just enjoying themselves, and the adults don't necessarily say anything because we have long separated from the whole idea that a village can raise a child. Nobody no wants to say nothing to nobody picnic. So everybody is just like zip it. And it is rough when all of this pressure is on the teacher.
Mhm.
It is rough. So perhaps we can find or we can create more forums where we actually help to educate the parents. Some parents really want to know more, they really want to help, they really want to be better, but they still need a little more nudge.
Mhm. Yeah, you've planted an idea there, Miss Ellis, and I can speak to my own work before we go to Mr. Royce. We're not forgetting you. That you know, for me, with my own struggles with engagement in school, I was always very studious, but I think internally I was aware of my own struggles, even in terms of pronouncing words. So my PhD research looked at English language learning and student engagement. So you're talking about, you know, teachers and researchers being interested in areas that they themselves have struggled with. So that's a good point. And also you raise the issue of the 120,000 that the ministry have mentioned that were disengaged from the education system. And this is on top of the many more that we know weren't engaged in the first place via prior to virtual learning. So the statistics are much wider. So you've planted the seed in terms of us exploring that more, even with parents themselves, to give their feedback. Okay, so we'll go on to Mr. Royce, and then I'll pass over to Mr. Cole.
Yes, so I just want to use this opportunity to reiterate something that Mrs. Brown-Earle alluded to, and that has to do with the importance of public education as relates to mental health. The truth is, for us to become a society that is functioning well, and well is not perfection, we have to embrace mental health, and it's important. We need to reach a point where, just like Grace and Lasco, mental health is a household name.
Yes.
We have to get to that point that kids, just like how they can pick up Alaska's corned beef, a Grace tin mackerel, that they can understand what is mental health. As it relates to noticing an increase in parents and teachers, the truth is, I'll give you a real life experience. I got a voicemail from a parent, and the voicemail said, "Sir, right now I'm frustrated. I kill myself and this little pitney, and I'm just frustrated with her, because she not a beer trouble she give me. And I'm telling you, my principal sent me the voice note and said, sir, what are you going to do?" And I found myself at the home of the parent, and in sitting and talking with the parent, I just wanted to hug the parent, and I did. I hugged the parent and I said to her, "Mommy, it's not all that bad. There is hope. The truth is, where this COVID pandemic has a lot of dynamics attached to it. And if we are not, and if you are not well headed, you might just succumb to the pressures of this COVID and all the dynamics that are attached to it." So I spoke to the parent, and I allowed her to express herself. I allowed her to vent, and I did not say a word until she was through venting. And when she was through, I had a few sessions with her, and we were able to come not to a full resolution, but we were able to understand how we can come to living with the situation as it was.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, colleagues, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And unless we have tenacity, then we are going to always be dealing with this situation. We just have to always reinforce the value of self, the value of cohesion and maintaining healthy relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing.
Yeah, relationships are key components, and you know, sometimes we so casually use these words about killing ourselves and killing the kids, and we see what's happening in society, even though there are other systemic issues that's attached to that, right? So also changing the languaging and the way in which we speak to our kids and about ourselves is also important in this mental health journey. Okay, Mr. Cole, over to you, and then I'll ask my esteemed colleague, Miss Dr. Walker, to go into the recommendation section.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hardware. Panelists, thank you so much for sharing your lived experiences. The challenges are real, Our children are going through a lot, and our teachers are so invested that what happens to our children also affect them. There are many barriers, there are many challenges that our children are facing, and some of these are picked up by our teachers, most times are picked up by our teachers, and the solutions are also coming from the teachers. So we have to also encourage, the powers that be to, look at some of these issues and some of these solutions and recommendations that are coming forward. But I did say earlier that I wanted to ask Dr. Earle a specific 2 questions, and maybe our other panelists can also weigh in as well. Because when I saw this, I was blown away. But given the reports, Dr. Earle, in the Gleaner a few months ago, that over 3,200 children were sexually abused between January 2020 to March 2021. And unfortunately, that number might be growing as we speak. Our teachers are the ones to pick up on these issues. We know as well from research that these issues can be emotionally distressing. For our viewers, just for you to be aware, our teachers' experiences with emotional distressing situations are often beyond our control and contribute to work-life imbalance. So along these lines, Dr. Earle, do you think that teachers and even school administrators need to be consciously aware of the issues pertaining to sexual abuse as they carry out their work? And I'll just ask the follow-up question, just to throw it in while you're preparing. How do you think that sexual abuse impact the school's ecology? So maybe you could just take on those 2 for us, Dr. Earle. Doc, are you there?
Yes, I just turned on my mic.
All right, good.
That was definitely, the sexual abuse of children definitely impacts the school ecology in so many negative ways.
Yeah.
Because these are now the children who will present with post-traumatic stress disorder, varying types of behavioral disorders, and getting through to them is not going to be the easiest thing because they have to go back home.
Mm-hmm.
They have to go back to the particular setting where this thing is taking place. And so, especially now where, and as you see, that statistics, when I saw that, my colleagues and I said, those are the ones that we hear about.
Yes.
What you probably can seriously add 50% to that, of that number to that, so these are the things which we're not catching up, we're not finding them because they're not face to face, because they're not going to see. What I recognize in a few of the students who have been referred to me with such a concern are high school ones who have privately messaged the teacher that something is happening to them. But these are the high school ones who can do that and are more au fait with the technology and how to send the private messages and so on. What's happening to the primary level?
Yeah.
Those ones. And so that is where my heart is. We need to find them. I've been made aware, I don't know if you are, that the guidance counselor have been asked to hand over some information to CD. I don't know how true it is. Someone shared that with me a couple of weekends ago. And then, so my concern is the Children's Services able to handle all of those visits?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they going to be contracting persons to go and help with these 120 that we know about, to find them? But yes, we really need our administrators and our teachers, as much as possible, need to be educated even more, need to be sensitized even more as to some of the cues and the signs. And if possible, the training, well, not if possible, the training should include online. What do we look for in the comments? How do we allow, we're doing the home and family life sessions, the guidance counseling sessions with them. Are we being patient enough to have each child respond as best as we can? Mm-hmm. And when they respond, how are we analyzing what they're saying? Mm-hmm. Those kinds of things. Yeah. this child, Tanika, who used to be bubbly and everything at in face to face, and now you have that child online, and the child is not as bubbly as before. And then it's hard now because guess what happened? Remember this is what 2019 we started? So they left that class. Say for example, they left grade 2 and they went to a new teacher in grade 3, and now they're going on to a new teacher in grade 4. So unless those 3 teachers come together and say, boy, I'm not picking up something right with this child, the child might just slip through and not learn to cope successfully, and then present in grade 6 with all type of behavior problems when they do come back face to face. And we're trying to figure out what happened.
Right.
So as much as we can continue the training, and they've done JTH, the Teachers Associations have done some training in the past. The guidance counselors, Jamaica Social Guidance Counselors in Education have done some training in the past. We need to keep this happening. And it doesn't have to be a one-day session, It can be a 30 or 40-minute session.
Yes.
About sensitizing the teachers and administrators regarding how do we identify and refer these children. And one thing we have to remember, it's better to err on the side of caution than never to have reached out to a child at all.
Thank you so much, Doc, for sharing that. Mr. Royes is also guidance counselor at the primary level. So Mr. Royes, you could weigh in on the questions that I posed about teachers and even school administrators being, consciously aware of these issues pertaining to sexual abuse, and how do these issues impact the school's ecology. Mr. Royes?
All right, thanks much. As you know, sexual abuse is a very sensitive issue. And it's very sensitive, especially when it involves persons that are in close proximity geographically, when persons are family members or family friends. The child or the teacher that may know of the issue and know of the perpetrator, that community can give some feeling of resentment and some feeling of intimidation to the child. And the child is going to be overwhelmed with feeling guilty for being, for one, expressing that, listen, I feel violated and you have traumatized me. Additionally, the child is going to feel judged by the community for sticking up for the right, for feeling pressure and responding to that pressure. So, of course, the child is not going to perform well academically, all because of the current issues that the child is combating. And let us not go around the bush. When sexual abuse involves members from the community, intimidation can be very traumatizing on the part of the child. Not even just intimidation, but resentment from family members for talking or for speaking up. So it really affects the ecology of the school community.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Royes. I'm sure our 2 other panelists will get the opportunity to weigh in on this, but I'm going to now, hand over the baton to Dr. Hardware, and then we can continue the conversation from there.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cole. I have one member of the audience, Trish, who said that children are afraid because they're fearful, and at times mothers or caregivers know and do nothing about it. And we know from numerous media reports that caregivers also sometimes benefit from these sexual relationships that men have with their kids, typically, young girls. And sometimes the parents, the fathers or the stepfathers, relatives, older relatives themselves are complicit. So there's an entire generational, trauma that's there. And we've heard of instances in which the grandmother has been abused, the mother has been abused. And to your point, Dr. Brown-Earle, they said they have endured it. So it's just the children time now to endure these type of sexual abuse and trauma. So we really need to address these issues, but I know that we're already over the 1 hour mark, and we want to provide some spaces for our audience to pose their questions or comments. So I'll pass it over to Dr. Walker for her to get us into discussing recommendations. We have spoken to the issue at length, and in some cases offered recommendation, but we want to tease this out a little bit more before we leave. So Dr. Walker, over to you.
Thank you so much. A very engaging conversation for those who have just joined. We have been talking about the whole issue around teachers' mental health and well-being, and we have essentially, you know, intersected that with what is happening even with students. And in keeping with that, we know, as we talk about the ecology of the school, we know that whatever happens with students, what impacts them over time, teachers, guidance counselors on the ground, they're also impacted, because when you have to address these issues and deal with kids with some of these same issues, you essentially over time will become emotionally drained. And I'm not the clinician or the expert here. I'm not a psychologist, but I know I know that Dr. Brown-Earle talked about that or alluded to that earlier. But I want each of our panelists to just give our audience, you know, what advice, and use your own lived experience too. What advice do you have for educators out there who are watching, and even parents who perhaps, you know, we mentioned earlier how some parents are calling teachers and they're being a little bit more disgruntled and aggressive, just bearing in mind that teachers are humans, right? So what advice do you have for these educators who are experiencing mental well-being issues, especially since priority has essentially over time been given to, you know, school leaders attending to students' well-being? How does that, can you give us some advice around that?
Okay, so I want to support our guidance counselor by saying self-care is going to be key. No, my teachers, my guidance counselors, my administrators, no must mean no. So you have your family time, it's your family time now. If that parent wants to talk about a multiplication table, that's not the time now. So no must mean no. Okay, so it's hard, it's not easy. Our culture has not socialized us to behave in that way, Dr. Annette, but we have to start practicing it for our own positive mental health sake. Self-care is powerful and key. And also, as much as we can, educate. Many of us are go to church. When you go up there to speak at church, talk about mental health. When you go on the different programs, when you're giving somebody a ride in your car, talk about the importance of positive mental health. Make it be a natural part. Teachers, make it be a natural part of your discussion. Talk about the importance of the children you work with, how you want them to be better thinkers, better persons. So the importance of personal self-care for the teachers, and the teachers who are aware, talk about the importance of positive mental health. That will help all of us and start the education train rolling and rolling well.
Go ahead, Miss Cyreta Henry.
I so agree with Dr. Brown-Earle on the self-care issue. And I also want us to think about networking as well. I mean, sometimes we have to just dispel with the notions in our mind that people are going to label us as this and label us as that, and just reach out to persons. Don't always try to pretend that, yes, I am strong and I have got this. Everybody at some point in time needs somebody else. And in order to really capitalize on the whole aspect of self-care, we need to incorporate networking and collaborating with others. So we need to reach out to others, tell them from time to time, you know, I am struggling with this, I need assistance with this, can you help me? And stop trying to be an island. Stop trying to take on everything by yourself. Reach out, let persons know what is happening, let them know how you are feeling. And sometimes you'll find that there are so many other individuals out there who are actually feeling the same way, and it makes you feel somewhat different in yourself, because you would say that you would normally think that I am the only person in the whole wide world is experiencing that. Because sometimes we have troubles, you know, kill us dead is we are alone in this boat sailing. But sometimes it helps to know that somebody else is experiencing the same thing, and together we can get through it.
Right. So we are hearing about self-care, saying no. From Dr. Brown-Earle, we're hearing Miss Henry talking about networking. And again, teachers, educators, remember that your mental health is your greatest wealth. And we understand your issues. We recognize the importance, but we have to hear from our guidance counselor who deals with all these, perhaps even having teachers coming to him and talking about how they feel. But more so, you as the guidance counselor, you are also faced with some of these issues related to teachers, students. What advice do you have for teachers at large and educators as a matter of fact?
All right, so teachers, you need to ensure that if there is consistency in certain behavioral patterns in how you operate, the truth is we know ourselves better than anybody. And if you notice that there is consistency in certain behavioral patterns, and I'm talking about negative behavioral patterns, then go and get some help. Get help if you notice that there is consistency in some behavioral patterns that were not normally you. Go and get some help. And I will reiterate the importance of self-care. Self-care is important. Treat yourself to luxuries. Treat yourself to nice things. I always say to teachers, you can read the Discover Yourself. Go in the bathroom when the shower is beating down on you. Listen to your heartbeat. Put away everything that is happening around you. Get in touch with your emotions. Talk to yourselves. You probably notice that there is something irregular about your body, and this could be as a result of you being stressed. Get some help. Get some medical. Get some therapy if that's what you need. Talk to a doctor. Whatever it is that you need. Get some consultation. Talk to your body. Some conversations that you will have with your body will allow you to realize that, whoa, I never even knew that my body was telling me this or telling me that.
Thank you.
So I recommend that. Talk to your body, talk to yourselves.
Thank you so much. And again, I hope you're all listening. It's very crucial. It's very important. We need to recognize the stigma around mental health, the stigma, especially in the Caribbean, Jamaican context, where we believe if we say to someone, you know, I felt depressed, or, you know, I felt anxious, you know, I'm feeling a little bit down today, we tend to want to say that person is mad. They're not mad. Just as how you would attend to your physical well-being, your mental health is equally important. Ms. Ellis, we'll have you in making that recommendation, and I turn it over to my esteemed panelists, host, I should say, Dr. Shawnee Hardware, and then Mr. Cole will close out. You're muted.
You're muted,
my dear.
Yes, I have so much to say, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. Recommendations. We did a video the other day with some health and family life education teachers where I was showing people where we need to create some mental health kits. You know, you might have a little pouch, and in the little pouch, you might have a nice little perfume that means a lot to you. You might have a little book to help you with journaling. They're practical things that we can do. I founded therapycircle.com. Sometimes I don't have time for it, but we try to have therapeutic photography sessions online karaoke, just for people to de-stress and engage in a therapeutic activity, digital detox retreat camps. And these are affordable stuff. I try to promote economical stress management relief activities. Another recommendation for the school, sometimes some guidance counselors are overburdened and they might feel as if they were not necessarily trained to go out into the communities. In 2008, when I was studying from a psychology degree and doing social work as well, from that time up until now, we don't necessarily see social workers being placed in the schools. And I do believe that all of these students who are being abused, the social workers will be able to reach out to them and just focus on all those cases, have a whole entire case management dealing with the students and the parents within their direct environments. So that's a second recommendation. In terms of abuse, we cannot underestimate the number of students who are being abused. I was groomed in high school, and as far as I'm concerned, persons might have suspected something, but nobody would have reported it. The church would have been silent because, you know, nobody wants to bring down shame and disgrace on their church brother or sister. So these are things we have to take very seriously. As a child, let's say I was groomed and I felt as if it's not like I was fighting. I might have enjoyed it. It doesn't mean that I was ready and that it was right. And sometimes these are things that we need to learn, because I hear an adult telling me some time ago that, you know, if a child enjoyed what was happening when they were being abused, then sure, it's not really anything. No, it's not true, because many of our brains were not developed until about age 25 to age 27. So I will keep it short in terms of my recommendations. Overall, we just need to talk. We just need to talk. I have been in sticky situations this year, and I call a parent. I know that Miss Henry is very helpful as well, very supportive. So we just need to open our mouths and talk, find ways to reach out, because we're all in this together. And I hope that we can all say, Ubuntu, I am because we are.
Great. I like that.
Thank you very much, Miss Ellis. You stay ready with your examples and your little kit there. We love it. So I know that we're almost on time, and my final question would have asked for a recommendation from the ministry, but perhaps we can call it that some other ways, because I know that we have members on, member of the audience on who would like to ask questions. I saw Zoom user raise his hand. I know Ms. Shorter, who was our former panelist, also is here and wants to ask a question. We would like the questions to be, you know, given the space, you know, very frank and very critical, but also very appropriate. So I also see Trish's hand. We'll allow around 10 minutes for that conversation. Please do not mute until I call on you and ask you to do so, nor turn on your camera. So I think the first person hand who I saw was Zoom user. I saw Zoom user's hand first. I don't know if that was Lavana.
Yes, it was. Hi everybody, it was Lavana. Night. I mean, my lighting is so bad. I'm in my workout session. How are you? I know I got in late, but my question is, what do you do when you don't have access to counseling as an educator? As you're like, you know, person saying, you know, get two persons, you know, what I've heard so far. What do you do when you live in some remote area and you just not have the access to somebody who can come and speak with you? Because speaking with you over the phone, it no work at times. And it depends on the severity of the person's mentality or mental illness, or, you know, the stage in which they are in at depression. What do you do when you just not have that hands-on access to someone who can assist you in that area? I hope that my question is most appropriate, but that's just my concern, you know, for persons who live so far. What do you do?
Maybe let's ask
I saw Mr. Ellis wanted to go first.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I saw you smiling, Miss Ellis. Do you want to go first?
Yes, I can go. When you feel as if you do not have anybody to reach out to, you can't access anything, I would say try to go home. And when I say go home, it's all about meditating, exercising. Walking can also be a form of meditation. I see that you are exercising, and the fact that you're exercising, that does a lot for your hormones, the happy feel-good hormones. So you are, that's already a great example. Sometimes you can journal, put your thoughts into writing, because sometimes, at least when you write it and put it on the paper, you can reorganize it and play with the words and the paragraphs, and you're able to be in control. You have something tangible to work with. And then maybe when you're finished, you can say, sure, I work myself over this. So you tear out the page and you're gone. Or you can start writing down some goals that you actually are able to work on. So meditation is key, exercise is key, just being very practical, going out in nature. There's lots of research to back ecotherapy. And even I myself, I love nature. I love hiking and camping. Even right now, I'm in the countries. I don't know if you can hear the peony wallies in my background, but we can control our environment and make great choices.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Earle, you have any question?
Yes, and if we have tried what she said, you can add music therapy to that as well.
Yes.
And if you try that and it's not working for you, then make a call. Say, find somebody. Start even with the teletherapy. And then who knows, probably the person can come and meet you at an arranged spot. I'm Seventh Adventist, and what we have found is that our pastors are very, very comfortable in allowing us to use their offices at particular times and so on. And we are in almost every corner of Jamaica. So we're able to reach it. I'm able to travel distances and meet people and do the social distance counseling. So some of us have that ability. But start with what was recommended by Ms. Ellis, and then add the music therapy to it as well. But reach out to someone. Don't give up. Reach out through the phone call. Find somebody you can talk to. If you can do the online, if not working for you, arrange and see how you can meet with the person. That's going to be very important. Always remember, it's strong people seek help. So you're a strong person when you seek help.
That's a good gem there. We're going to have to tweet that one, Dr. Earle Insight, and credit you with it. Okay, is there anyone else who want to comment? Ms. Henry, Mr. Royes, before we go to Trish, who has her hand up.
Well, I'm just in agreement with what Ms. Ellis and Dr. Earle said. I am wondering though, based on what the person asked, I'm wondering if they are actually alluding to professional help, because sometimes we think that because we can't get professional help, then we are not getting help. Mm-hmm. So, we don't really have to go out any distance to meet anybody or to talk to anybody far away. Sometimes even just your friend, your sister, your pastor, as Dr. Earle said, anybody who is within your immediate space. And you always find, as Jamaicans, somebody always knows somebody else. Mm-hmm. But somebody always knows somebody else, right? So you share with somebody and they say, oh, I know who you can talk to. See, I line up you with X, Y, Z. And, so I think the first step is just to reach out. Mm-hmm. First step is to reach out.
Thank you. Mr. Royes, I'll give you the floor and then we go to Trish.
All right, in response to the question that Trish asked, I think I want to agree with what all my panelists have stated. And I definitely concur with the importance of exercise, the importance of nature, and there's always somebody that we can reach out to. It's not everybody who wants up in our business, but there's always somebody that can even make a referral to say, all right, I know somebody that could suggest somebody to you, or somebody that could send you somewhere. So, networking is important. And sometimes, we can ask questions and we can just know how to ask the question to get the help. And if we don't want to be explicit in asking the question, we can just ask for help in a particular way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Trish, I'll give you the floor and then we can collect other questions and engage other members of the audience via social media.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night,
Trish.
All right. I must commend you guys for watching on this stuff because it's sensitive and it's usually something that persons, especially in Jamaica, when you talk about mental health, everyone wants to say, oh, you get stone or by a mother or whatever. So there is always some stigma attached to you wanting help, seeking help, because you notice that you have acknowledged that you have an issue. All right, so my question is this. If a teacher who has been abused, now teaching her class, and has not gotten over what has happened to her in the past, has noticed this with several students, and has now, this situation now that she's faced with caused her to shut down, right? She has sought help, but the help that she was offered, she was betrayed. How do you deal with situation like that? Because, all right, for me, remember the question now, but I want to share something with you though. When I was going to primary school, I was molested, right?
Sorry to hear.
And it was by a close family friend, right? You could just call them family. I felt I was violated. It wasn't to the point of penetration, but it was traumatic because it was at gunpoint. You get me?
Wow.
I went back to school. I was in grade 4. And may I tell you the truth? Every boy when me see, me fight them. I got aggressive. Me never trust nobody, not even my brother them. So at night, when me figure I'm in my bed, everybody asleep, me up. So through this now, me find me all are late for school and all of that. So with a teacher in that setting who has not dealt with that demon, she's now seeing this manifesting in her students. How does she deal with that? Knowing that trust has been broken, that you know, and she wants to help, but she needs the help too. How do you approach that?
Well, thank you very much for being brave, Trish, and for sharing that. That's a very, very powerful question. And we would like to connect with you off air, but I would leave it up to Dr. Brown-Earle for being a clinician in the space, and then to the guidance counselor, because I know that the guidance counselors would have received some level of training.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Brown-Earle.
Okay, thank you. So we really want adults to understand that, yes, you might have been betrayed, but there's still someone out there who wants to help you. And that's going to be important. So if you know of a situation where somebody has been betrayed in their confidence, whatever confidentiality in sharing information, you still want to encourage them to seek help. Because if they don't seek help, let me put it simply, they're not going to get better. All right? So if you know of that situation, still encourage the individual to come seek help. So, you know, and if they want to seek help outside of the parish, you know, outside of the region, whatever it is, but still encourage them to seek help, because you want them, tell them you want them to be better and stronger having had these negative experiences.
What does this help look like? Just to explore a little bit more.
Okay, so we would have to find out what is it that occurred before. So when they were they betrayed by another professional? Were they betrayed by a close friend or family member? Because all of that now will guide the new therapist as to how to provide the services and the care that the individual will need.
And
so,
just so that we address her question thoroughly. So she's asked about that teacher who has experienced that and has seen that in her students as well, what she's interpreting as abuse based on this teacher's experience. So what advice do you give to the teachers? Do they call I'm not quite, the name isn't coming to me though, the agency in charge of student, you know, child abuse? Do they speak to the guidance counselor first? What's the steps in terms of, or is it the parents as the first point of contact to have conversation with the parent and the child, and then refer to a training?
Okay. So my experience is that the school teachers usually contact the guidance counselors, who basically act as social workers as well, and they go and they do the home visits, the site visits, and make the report to the particular government agency, or depending on the type of case, it might mean something that has to go directly to the police. But the guidance counselors in Jamaica, I know, are most of the ones who will now follow through to find out what's happening here and make the report to the various agencies. But the teacher needs to get help for him or herself as well, because there's something there that they're not dealing with well, and they need to get help.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll pass over to Mr. Royes, Ms. Ellis, and Ms. Henry to close us off. And perhaps in answering your question, since you're a part of the education system, you could mention if there's supports that the ministry provide to address this type of concern. If not, then we can do our own research and post that online.
So first, let me use this opportunity to say, I know it probably took a lot of guts and a lot of wits to come out and express what you just shared with people that you're not even familiar with. And the fact that you've done this, I'm sure that in some way or somehow, someone will be impacted by what you've just stated. So I applaud you for taking the initiative to do that. I understand that, and the truth is, human beings sort of will betray you at times, and it's a part of life. But not because of that betrayal, you should not go on and seek help from some other entity or somebody else. It's important that there is, in education, that if you're going to be effective, you have to have peace of mind. So peace of mind is going to be very essential. So if you need to get help from somewhere else, go and get that help. I know you're going to be probably constantly reminded of what may have happened in the past, but trust yourselves and trust your feelings, because at the end of the day, it's your feelings that allows you to express yourself. So don't hesitate to get some help from somebody else or some other route.
But that issue around trust, you know, where she also mentioned the whole idea around being betrayed, and that's also another element. So even though, and as Dr. Brown-Earle mentioned earlier in the discussion, that we don't have enough professionals, especially psychologists and counselors, you know, social workers, to attend to these things where that confidentiality is there, you know.
Okay.
And I'll be one of the persons to say, confidentiality is a big issue in the helping profession. Over the years, that's allowed a lot of clients and potential clients to have reservations in wanting to seek help. But when you are a victim of a situation, you are the one that understands how important it is for you to get help. So because you are the one that is in the situation, I beseech you, or for anybody that is listening on that is in a similar situation, go and get help. Everybody's feelings is different, everybody's situation is different and unique to themselves, but get help.
Okay, thank you very much. So Miss Ellis and Miss Henry, quickly, because I know our audience have been very attentive and we don't want to keep them a little bit longer, and then we can connect and extend further support if possible to Trish.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, concerning healing and getting help, this is a lifetime business. It's a lifetime, it's an everyday business. Sometimes we have a culture where, you know, the song says, don't trust people, so we can't trust people. But then we have to at least start learning to trust ourselves and understanding how we can take responsibilities for all our traumatic experiences. So sometimes I find it very interesting to go online and go on some of those online forums where you find a whole host of people from all over the world who are sharing similar stressors and problems like you. That's a good tip. I think it works all the time because you tend to realize that you're not the only one going through it. And of course, nobody knows how you feel. Nobody knows how you feel, but it's always nice to know that there's somebody else who is overcoming a similar issue that you are facing. In terms of being optimistic, I cannot say this enough that we have to keep a positive mindset, because sometimes we grow with something called cognitive distortion. Sometimes we grow with some black and white thinking where we say, boy, these type of people, they're all bad. These type of people, they're all good, when it's not the case. So it's important for us to understand how we're thinking, pen it out, and see how we can reframe our thoughts. Of course, I am a believer in exploring new ways and new means. So for example, I realized that music is very powerful. And so I said, all right, then I'm going to start going to karaoke. But ladies and gentlemen, can I tell you that almost all of the songs that I started singing at karaoke were healing me? I had to sit down, go online, search for the words, and I realized that, oh, from I was a child, anytime I hear this song, I was crying because apparently I was feeling so much pain where sometimes I could not even express it. I might have felt as if I didn't have anyone to express it to. You know, the same trust issue. You just don't trust anybody. So in exploring, I realized that the music did a lot for me, even as an adult. By listening by myself and going through the words and seeing who wrote the song, why they write the song, sometimes I realized that the tears were just healing, and happy moments follow, and I can rise and walk resilient and confident, knowing that yes, I have been broken, but I know what to do or where to go. And you see, because just as though we feel physical pain, right? We know we might not be feeling physical pain right now, but we know that maybe next week we're going to be feeling physical pain. And so we put things in place, whether it's the mental health kit or having that corner or room in the house where you can just go and be with yourself. Just keep on exploring until you find the right fit.
Okay, thank you for that. Last, Ms. Henry, could you share with us, and then we ask Mr. Cole to take us out. Do you have any advice? If not, then we can ask Mr. Cole to wrap up.
All right. I'm in agreement with all that was said. Also, I'd like to speak from an administrative perspective. I think administrators, they really should try to do a bit more. I know we all need help, we all need the assistance, but I think as administrators, you have first-hand experience of what teachers are going through. And from time to time, we have always been having professional development sessions. How about we switch it up a bit and have some self-care sessions? Get somebody to come in and talk with the teachers, because I mean, sometimes, we have this thing that we are so self-conscious that we don't want to reach out, and we feel that if we reach out, we're going to be labeled, so as administrators, we can just take it from a generalistic perspective and just get somebody in to talk to them from time to time, and you'll find that persons will start to open up, and eventually they'll start to heal.
Okay, thank you for that. So very wonderful advice, Trish. We will connect with you further. So Mr. Cole, take us out. We're here for almost an hour, 45 minutes through this engaging conversations, but we don't want to keep our audience much longer online. So over to you, Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Dr. Hardware. They are enjoying it, and I think it's beneficial. It's therapy too. It's therapy too, because we can express ourselves, and Trish got the opportunity to say something. I'm sure that she's so brave, and we want to commend her for that. And I'm sure that some sort of help will come from her, making the situation public. But at this point, I would have been asking for different recommendations, maybe one main point from our panelists. But you have done an excellent job, panelists. You have shared your views, you have made recommendations. I hear about self-care, taking care of yourself, talking to yourself in the shower, let the shower beat you, and go exercise, listen to the birds, taking your walk, and therapy camps, and talk. and reaching out for help. So these are useful strategies that we can all use as we confront mental health. And so I want to really thank you panelists and to thank my colleagues and friends for being a part of the session today.
Sorry.
Right, so at EduTalk 876, we are not just about talking about the issues or the challenges that are facing the education system, our teachers in particular. We will use the opportunities to make recommendations nationally and internationally. We will be posting, articles in the papers, in the national papers. You will see different things popping up on our social media pages, and you're encouraged to join us on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, where we're there, and we can keep the connection going. So I want to thank you, panelists. Thank you for your participation on EduTalk 876. This is our second podcast. We also want to thank our listeners and those who would have made this possible. We look forward to your positive feedback. As I said, the conversation continues. Go to our pages and make a comment, share with your friends, and let's keep the conversation going. We have some other interesting topics planned for you, and we will keep you informed, and we will share the information with you. But for now, we have to say goodbye. So thank you for joining us. Your contributions are powerful. You too should also, take care of yourself and take on some of the recommendations that you would have also shared. I'm going to be taking on some as well. I've started. I am exercising. I need to talk to myself